Hey guys, here is a quick tutorial for the brooder that I built for my ducklings. Here's one of them right here, about 3 weeks old. I took a large storage tote, just like this, and I cut the lid, put a little hardware cloth on top, bolted it down, so we got a lot of room to breathe here. Plenty of room for the light to warm them, obviously at varying stages as I lift it above it. I'll show the light in a little while. To set this guy up inside, set it up inside, I start with a puppy pad at the bottom, and then here's a couple things I have for the inside. I got an old rice container and I cut the hole in the middle just like that, so it's big enough for the ducklings to get their head inside, but not big enough to where they can play around in it, and that keeps this in better condition for longer. Obviously they poop like crazy, so clean it out every 2 or 3 days depending on how many ducklings you have in there. Obviously you would need a bigger tote if you had a lot of them. Then I got the food right here. Since they're 3 weeks old, I've got the starter grower non-medicated right here, and I cut it with a little bit of oats, not the quick oats, just regular oats, just like that, to get the protein content down now that we're past 2 weeks. And then I add a little brewer's yeast, give them that niacin that they're needing. So far everybody looks like they're pretty healthy, looking pretty good. This one's just hanging out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get it set up. I'll show you the process as we go, and let me know below if you have any questions. All right, so I've got the puppy pad laid out inside. It fits pretty well in this tote, so I'm not using the sticky contacts back here, but you could if you had any issues with it falling in. I took a old tackle box like this and I cut the lid off. I zip tied a square of hardware cloth on top and cut off as many of the sharp edges as possible. I try to cover the edges with the pine shavings, and I'll show you that in just a second, so there are no sharp edges. But I set their water container on top of this so that the water that comes out when they kind of go all over the place falls in the bottom here, and it doesn't mess up the pine shavings too much out there. Now obviously their poop does over a few days, but that keeps you from getting really nasty in a day or two and kind of gets you maybe to 3 or 4 days. For this size tote, I'd say maybe maximum is probably 4 ducklings, and then once they get to about that size, you're probably going to have to upgrade them to something a little bit larger, maybe even a kennel. When I do that, I will make another video for that. All right guys, so here's how I have it set up inside. We've got enough pine shavings to kind of cover the edge of this. Even if it falls in, that's fine. I clean it out every time I clean the whole thing out. I've got the food on the opposite side as the water, so that obviously they can go back and forth, but it doesn't get this super nasty super fast. I probably have to change the water twice a day. It's honestly could probably go a couple days, but I like to keep it as fresh as possible. But again, you see the holes right here, the water falls in down there, and we're good to go keeping them separate. So here's a setup for the inside. Here's what it looks like closed up. Obviously for the lid here, I just measured out 2 squares and I cut it with an X-Acto knife. I drilled a couple holes here to get these bolts to go through. Obviously you probably don't need something this intense, but I like the washer underneath to kind of keep the hardware cloth down. I cut a big enough square to where obviously there's no sharp edges anywhere near the inside. They can climb and kind of get to the top, but really have no issues with anybody getting out. Here's a setup with the heat lamp. I've got it on a stand for kind of a reptile container like this. It allows me to go up and down pretty easily. I'm trying to keep it roughly about 70-75 degrees right now because we're about 3 weeks old, maybe about 3.5. Just making sure they're not making a lot of noise in there so they're warm enough. Thanks for watching, guys. It's PJ. Franklin says thanks. If you guys have any questions about the process, feel like I left anything out, let me know. Answer your questions below. Thanks again, guys.